well ahead of its time, according to Dr. Artemis Samopoulos, president of the Center for Genetics, Nutrition, and Health in Washington, D.C. One of the world's leading experts on the role of omega-3s in nutrition and their effect on health and weight management, she has studied nutrition science for over 40 years and considers Carl a true pioneer.
He was a very brilliant person who had enormous powers of observation and understanding of his surroundings, I would say his whole environment. He understood the importance of human beings, their relation to food, particularly plant food, and the environment in which the plants grew.
Carl was a rare combination of a fertile mind that knew the value of a hard day's work, often 17 or 18-hour days.
He'd have to go out to the valley and harvest his alfalfa and haul it all the way back down again. And then you'd have to be up all night drying it and measuring it, and had to be just the right touch and feel. And then you have to grind it and extract it with the still. He did everything. He did absolutely everything.
He kept up this pace for nearly 4 years. During one of his odd jobs working in a cement plant, Carl met another woman.
He said it was one of the real strong loves of his life, and they were married, and she got pregnant, and she died, and the baby died in childbirth. And he told me that during that period he was almost ready to check it in, because he was in his mid-40s now, still didn't have a product that was acceptable, and now he'd lost the love of his life and a baby, and it was a very, very trying time for him emotionally.
Back in Connecticut, an old friend, Evelyn Berg, heard that Carl was no longer married. She'd had a crush on him for years and decided to come out to California. She doted on him and began to support him in his dream. In 1931, he and Evelyn married. But there were still lots of long days and nights of product development ahead of them. It took until 1934, 7 full years since his return from China, before Carl had something he could try to sell. His first product, which he simply called a food supplement, had 3 components: a plant concentrate, a chewable mineral tablet, and a fat-soluble oil product which was rich in vitamins A and E.
And imagine trying to sell that through drugstores to people who've never heard of vitamins.
It was a tough sell. Carl did much of his inventing by intuition, and he was very passionate about it. But in part because this excitable entrepreneur was not academically accredited, the outside world was more cautious. Carl was battling the image of an eccentric. Finally, he started giving his product away to friends.
They'd say, "Thanks, Carl," and they'd put it on the shelf and forget about it. You'd come back a few months later and say, "Did you take those vitamin things?" And they'd say, "Well, haven't got around to it yet, Carl."
And he said he rediscovered a basic marketing principle. He said, if I don't put value on these products, nobody else will either. And he determined what it cost him to make these products. He said, I will never give away another unit again.
With most of his product tucked away in medicine cabinets, Carl estimated that his success rate was less than 1 in 100 people that he approached. But those who did buy noticed results with the product. Carl knew he was on the right track. In 1936, Carl and Evelyn had a boy, Sam, whom Carl adored. Soon they moved to Balboa Island, California, and into the corner of a boat storage shed. Here, he continued to try to perfect the product, working with fish oils, kelp, and other plants. He kept track of successes and failures in his diary.
He said he made some awful messes in those early days as he attempted to do this. And I think he was pretty much the laughingstock of Balboa Island, because they knew about this crazy inventor who was making all these strange concoctions.
He got everything into capsule form and had neighbors help fill them. Ed Richardson was one of those neighbors. His father owned the boat storage loft, and while Carl sometimes got locals to try his samples, it was not for Ed.
I didn't try any of it when he was first making it there. I thought they were rabbit pellets, and I wasn't about to eat rabbit food.
With sales minimal, Carl was still working odd jobs to support his family, and then doing his research at night. But trying to care for the new baby on a shoestring budget brought home some harsh realities to Evelyn, it wasn't enough just to love Carl.
Well, I don't think he had much time at home. He was extremely focused. She knew that Carl had this dream and the vision, but it finally came down to she couldn't do it anymore.
Unlike the breakup of his first marriage, this one was not acrimonious. It was all done with the best interests of baby Sam at heart.
She ended up taking Sam back to Connecticut, where her family lived, and trying to raise Sam there, so Carl was on his own.
Money slowed to a trickle. Things became so tight that Carl had to leave the boat shed in the middle of the night without paying the rent.
Just selling it by himself, it was impossible. He sent a shipment up to a pharmacy in San Francisco, and a year later he records in his diary that he just received some returns from them, 23 bottles, and he said that's 23 out of 24 that we shipped. And you could almost see the tears on the diary. You know, this is just not working, shipping it off to somebody who doesn't understand vitamins.
In 1939, Carl again set up shop, this time in a small building in a rundown section of Los Angeles. He was still searching for a name for his dream when he stumbled on a scientific journal article written by Roger Williams. Williams used the word Nutrilite to describe all of the things needed in human nutrition, including, but not limited to, vitamins.
My father saw this term and he thought, boy, that's a fabulous term.
On April 3, 1939,
Nutrilite and Nutrilite's Inc. Thinking this over for a week and like it better every day.
While things were still tight, by 1941 Carl felt successful enough to ask for Sam to come back to California and live with him. Evelyn agreed. Carl and young Sam became partners. Not only did the boy help with the work, cleaning and filling bottles, he also began to learn about his father's passion for exploring the universe.
He made his own little microscope to look at pond water, and he was always impressed with the micro universe. At the same time, he built his own telescope to look at the majesty of the stars. And he was so intrigued by this incredible, distances and sizes and how it all, worked together.
Carl often took Sam fishing near Newport Beach, California. And Sam overheard some people who were looking at the beautiful houses there and commenting how lucky those people were to own those homes. Carl pulled his son aside.
And he said, I don't want you listening to those fishermen. Most of these people who live in these homes, they had ideas, and they turned those ideas into products, and they were extraordinarily successful at it. And he said, we have an idea. He said, someday our idea is going to be accepted. And he said, someday we might, come back and buy a house down here at the beach and have a boat and have our own boat.
But the cold reality then was that there still wasn't much interest in Carl's product.
At one point he was living on basically oatmeal and Nutrilite, and not very many people would continue to go ahead with that. But he knew that he was right.
He tried different ways of marketing directly to people, from one-on-one meetings to public speeches. One newspaper dubbed him Vita Man. He even tried getting attention via radio.
There was a very popular program in the Southern California area called Man on the Street. And it took several days, but finally he, got in the right spot. So when the man on the street was walking, he stepped out, and the guy would say, what do you do? And, then he would tell him, my name is Carl Renborg, and I've developed a new food supplement product. He'd go on about the story. But that was kind of free radio advertising.
Nutrilite sold in fits and starts through World War II. Finally, the self-taught scientist decided to get some schooling on how to sell at a Dale Carnegie course. A psychology professor, Dr. William Castleberry, was the teacher. Carl became friends with him.
And he got Castleberry to use the product. And Castleberry thought it was fabulous. And he really got excited about the product and its potential.
Castleberry partnered with a super salesman that he knew named Lee Meitinger to create a sales company focusing on Nutrilite. Their concept was to modify a marketing plan based on the success of Sears and JCPenney, which rewarded sales managers for opening new stores by giving them a percentage of the business. The idea, which marked the birth of multi-level marketing, was to let successful distributors recruit other distributors, and everyone would share in the profits.
So they got together with Carl and created this exclusive distributorship.